Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric. You know what time it is? It's time to talk about MAME 278 because the release is here after skipping the month of May because the MAME team had a lot of new improvements in mind, especially on the sound side of things. So it's always awesome to get a new version of MAME, but this one feels fundamentally bigger than anything else we've seen all year. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But let's jump right into all the improvements you're going to see in MAME 278 if you download it today. Number one is going to be Sega Model 2 improvements. I've been previewing these on different commits to the code, and honestly Model 2 is doing so much better than it ever was before. Now you're going to be able to enjoy a lot more of that. Now I don't want you to go in thinking that Sega Model 2 is 100% perfect and buttoned up within MAME. It definitely still has some work to go, and that's not in any way, shape, or form a strike against the emulation author here. This is absolutely outstanding stuff, but it isn't a finished product. So definitely just go in to have fun. Pretty much every single game is playable from start to finish. You're just going to see some shading issues or otherwise. But this magic carpet here is definitely something that got cleaned up in some of the commits, and I will show you guys some of the commit notes as well. And if you ever want to follow along with what is getting committed to the next version of MAME, I will leave a link in the description below where you can basically see the real-time builds and what everyone is sending in and is being merged into the next release of MAME. It is a really fun way to just kind of see how the sausage gets made, for lack of a better term, and it's how I actually get these videos out day of because I know what is coming. If we take a look here, you're going to see at least 2 hours ago, as of me making this video, some of the sound commits were sent in, and it's one of those things. I do capture a little bit of footage ahead of time to get these things out day of when MAME 2.78 releases. But moving over to something like the House of the Dead, this game has gone from basically not having any graphics whatsoever outside of some of the text and now being 100% recognizable as the House of the Dead, being playable from start to finish and being a ton of fun. There's still a few graphical things in here that aren't quite adhering to actual Sega Model 2 hardware, but honestly between the visual improvements, which make a huge difference because you can actually see the enemies, to the sound improvements, this is feeling like a 90% plus completed the House of the Dead. And it's going to be your first soundtrack sample because we're talking about sound here, and I'll be right back with a ton more.
Others are still inside. Save them. Help! They're inside. Help them. Sophie?
Rogan, it's you!
Nobody leaves here alive.
Sophie!
I mean, that just sounds like the House of the Dead to me, but leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. And as we go through some of the gameplay footage here as well, you can just see how close this looks to real Sega Model 2 hardware if you're familiar with it. And I'm sure in the next couple months we'll probably see even more improvements. And don't forget, the new sound system is incorporated in this month's release of MAME as well. That's something I'll let you discover on your own. I am a very visual person, and I always say I have 2 tin ears. So when it comes to the new sound streaming system, you guys are going to discover that on your own, which should be a ton of fun, because it's not the type of thing that really comes across well in a video. But moving over to Sega Rally, another game last time I showed it to you had a lot of graphical glitches and really didn't work well whatsoever, is also now working basically close to what the real Sega Model 2 PCB would do. And it's one of those things, this is one of the best games of all time, and having these incorporated into MAME is incredible, because the standalone Model 2 emulator has definitely been abandoned for a lot of years now and really isn't seeing any improvements whatsoever. So having this come over to MAME, having it get improvements, is just awesome to see, because it means you're going to get an even better version of a Sega Model 2 emulator, and that definitely makes a difference, because sure, there's probably still some House of the Dead cabinets out there. It was a popular game, those Daytona USAs or Sega Rally, but there's a ton of other games on Model 2 that you probably really can't find an arcade cabinet for unless you go to a specialty arcade. So having this stuff incorporated into MAME, not just for preservation but for fun purposes, is great. But it's soundtrack sample number 2 because I want you to understand how good the audio is, and I'll be right back.
3, 2, 1, go! Wow! Very long, easy right. Long, easy right, maybe. Very long, easy left.
Honestly, that sounds exactly like Sega Rally should to me, and it's one of those things from the soundtrack to the announcer, it's just such iconic audio. And speaking of audio, if my voice sounds at all different today, that's because I had to bring my editing laptop along with my microphone and everything else to Vermont with me as I settle at my mother's estate, because unfortunately I mentioned in a previous video, she did pass away from stage 4 cancer, so I loaded up half of my crap and basically brought it halfway across the country just because I love bringing these videos to you guys, and I get hyped about this, so if my voice sounds slightly different, you know why. But honestly, Sega Model 2 is shaping up so incredibly well, and I can't wait to see future improvements come to MAME, but right now basically every game you can enjoy. Now moving over to another commit that I was very surprised to see and also involves racing games. This is the Taito Type 0. I don't want you guys to get this confused with the Taito Type X, that PC based hardware. This is Taito's last custom silicon PCB for the arcades they ever made, and they developed a 3D chip in conjunction with a university in Japan to basically try to rival what Sega had with Model 3 and what Namco had with System 23. It wasn't the most successful thing in the world, but it's got a ton of fun games, and it's one of those things basically does not work in any way, shape, or form in MAME, which is fine. It is definitely very complex hardware, and it doesn't have the biggest library, nor the most nostalgia for it compared to stuff like Model 2 or the other 3D boards we have, but I was definitely excited just to even hear Type 0 mentioned, and you'll see here in some of the commits, the direct mode poly handling and texture modes were basically cleaned up, but it's one of those things this really doesn't render all that much of an improvement, at least on my end. But it is nice to see that people are still looking at the Type 0 because these boards are not the easiest thing to come across. You have to basically hunt for them to actually buy one. They are hard drive based, and a lot of times those hard drives love to die, and it does require some trickery to actually get these games to load up anything that they were not originally meant to load up. You can do multis on this, but it takes a little bit of effort, and honestly, I'm the idiot that likes to collect these big arcade PCBs. For the rest of you, I don't recommend you do stuff like this. That's why we love MAME and have MAME, so you can enjoy games without having massive metal boxes stored in your closet and around your office with all of these arcade games on board. But this chip right here, that custom 3D DSP, that's what we're talking about with those improvements. Now unfortunately, I still really didn't get into any sort of games. I always have the issue here with Type 0 where it basically just goes to a black screen where it doesn't do much whatsoever. So it's one of those things. I wanted to notate this as a change because I hope this means people are going to start looking at Type 0 games a little bit closer. That way we can actually get these into MAME, because stuff like Battle Gear and Battle Gear 2, Stunt Typhoon, the ping pong game Landing High Japan, they are really fun experiences that the only way you can play right now is either by finding an arcade cabinet or going ahead and purchasing a PCB and wiring it up. So hopefully sometime soon we see a little bit more going on when it comes to the Type 0 board. I'd love to see just a couple extra improvements, but I couldn't even get into Stunt Typhoon, but sometimes this initialization takes like 40 minutes just to even try to boot. Sometimes it's very weird like that. Now speaking of very difficult to deal with custom 3D hardware for the arcades, there was an update to Sega Hikaru as well, not really going to render any games playable in MAME, but it does look like some of the developers out there are looking at Hikaru hardware to try to get it emulating better, because honestly what we have, it does work, but it is finicky and it does have a lot of graphical glitches, and unfortunately Hikaru boards are the hardest thing in the world to deal with. I keep trying to buy them and they keep coming in broken because they are incredibly delicate, because Sega made a manufacturing flaw when they actually built the board, so some of the custom 3D chips just love to pop completely off the board and they need to be reballed to work again. But I would love to have Hikaru in MAME, and I'm glad that people are looking at it, because even though it is a thin library, it has a ton of fun games. Stuff like Brave Firefighters here, I would love to see this working in MAME. It's basically a light gun game where you play as a firefighter. It has a lot of fun, it has a lot of charm, and honestly trying to find an arcade PCB or cabinet for this today is near on impossible. Obviously the hose wasn't supposed to be going through the floor. This is in a build of Demule that makes the game playable, but it still definitely has a decent amount of glitches, so I would really love to see this come into MAME. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me, if you could snap your fingers and make one arcade board either work flawlessly or work in any way, shape, or form, which one would it be? Because there's some boards out there that don't do much, and there's some boards that don't do anything whatsoever. For me, it's definitely that Taito Type 0. I'd love more people to be able to experience the games, because Taito made some incredible things. But Hikaru emulation in MAME would be great. There's so many fun games, and stuff like Planet Harriers are definitely Sega hidden gems. And that leads into our next soundtrack sample. Imagine this amazing audio in Planet Harriers coming out of MAME. I'll be right back with more. Amazing soundtrack, and that sound sample was just to get you excited for the idea of potential hooker emulation in the future. But it's so much fun to go through the GitHub notes here. If you see here for the render improvements, it specifically calls out the carpet in Sonic the Fighters, and that's why I capture this footage to show you these improvements in real time. A big thanks to the moderator of my Discord, the Cool Pup. He helped out with some captures this month as well, because it's been one hell of a busy month for me personally to get all of this content out on time. But it is so much fun, again, just to see these things actually come to MAME. Areas and games that definitely had glitches or games that never even used to work now suddenly being playable. That's a ton of fun, but don't forget, not everything is a massive improvement. Some things are small but noteworthy. Basically, Tekken 3 has a new version that's going to work in MAME, and don't forget, basically all the Tekken games had so many different revisions, so many different regional differences, that there are probably maybe like 8, 9, 10 versions of Tekken 3 out there potentially, and not every single one of them was ever dumped or added to MAME as playable. So there is a new version of Tekken 3 that you can sit down and play. Now, of course, it's not going to be fundamentally that much different than any other Tekken 3 out there. It is still the same base game, but there are different revisions to it with small changes, and from a preservation standpoint, making sure every single release of a game that works in MAME is available and working definitely is important, because people still love to play Tekken 3 competitively, and some people have preferences to certain builds of the game. So it's always great to see stuff like System 12 get improvements and have new games working in them, even if we could play other versions of Tekken 3 at the start, because that is part of the preservation process of MAME. It's not just here to make sure you have fun, it's here to make sure that all of these games are saved for the future, so you can just sit down and play them. Somebody can come in and research them, basically just do whatever they need with it. And there's so many rare variants out there of arcade games as well, different ROM revisions that basically no one's seen before. It's always nice to see this. So if you go through the notes as well, you will see here that Tekken 3 Japan, that version .d now works, and it sounds as good as this, and I'll be right back.
Round 1, fight!
I mean, honestly, Tekken 3 always has a great soundtrack. It sounds great coming out of MAME, and there is a new version to play. Now let's move into the section of the video, which is what I call, you don't need to ask me down below unless you already have. I will tell you the information right now. People always ask about improvements to Midway Zeus and Midway Zeus 2 on every single video. There have been no changes whatsoever, and I know people want to play Cruis'n Exotica on the Zeus 2, but it's one of those things that just hasn't changed whatsoever right now. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to say something different, but right now, no movement whatsoever. And it's the same thing with Konami Viper emulation. A lot of the controls are still completely jacked up. Obviously the graphics here are not correct and not what you'd expect to come out of an original PCB, but it is still work in progress, and hopefully somebody takes up the mantle and updates it soon, because for as many games as I show you in these MAME update videos that now work, there are hundreds of games out there that do not work, and you have to have original Konami Viper hardware like you're seeing here from my personal collection to actually enjoy them. So again, just leave me that comment down below and you tell me, what do you want to see working in the next version of MAME? For me, that Type 0 board is definitely important. Stuff like the Konami Viper, definitely important as well. I would just love to see all of this stuff get buttoned up, but of course it takes a lot of people to do this work, and it also takes a lot of time. So right now this is what you're going to get out of Viper, and I'm happy to even see it. But between the new sound system and MAME.278, arcade emulation is just getting better and better. But obviously, at least for me, being a huge Sega fan, the big takeaway from this month is that Sega Model 2 is doing so much better. Definitely still a few visual things to iron out, but it looks amazing. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.